I'm Ashley Levien. I'm the co-founder of KickOffAt3, and I'm a full-time bus driver.
My name's Michael Wallace. I'm co-founder of KickOffAt3, and I'm don't arrest me, anybody, but I'm a full-time police officer.
Yeah. So I think one of the questions was, growing up without a father and how that affects us. So my own personal experience, well, I don't know where to go back, to be honest with you, but I actually lived with my mum for 2 years up in Scotland. We moved to Scotland. She was living with her ex-partner at the time. And obviously that time my dad wasn't around. But times were tough then, so I kind of wanted to kind of move away from the area. Scotland wasn't for me, to be honest with you. So I decided that I wanted to move back down to London and live with my dad. So I moved in with my dad from about 6 or 7 years old. But unfortunately, my dad, he was a very hard worker. He went from his full-time role as being a security officer at Brent Cross to working on nightclub doors. So he'd go from his security job, have his dinner at home, so I'd see him for about an hour, and then he'll get ready and he'll go and do his night job. So I would never really see him. So I'd be left with my stepmom, and that relationship really wasn't good. So I felt like my dad wasn't around when I really needed him, especially through my teenage years and going through school, and experiencing certain things. I really needed my dad then, but he wasn't around. I completely understand. He was out working, he's providing for his family, but at the same time, at that age, they're crucial years. You go through a lot of different things at that age. So, I needed him around. And obviously I didn't have my mum, so I couldn't speak to my mum. So it was really, who could I go to and who could I speak to? So that relationship between myself and my dad kind of it disintegrated really. And then at the age of 16, I was actually told to leave my house and leave the family home. And I really expected my dad to stick up for me, but unfortunately he didn't. And I left, and our relationship since then has really been non-existent. So, there's a long story there, but in a nutshell, that's my experience of growing up without my dad.
For me, growing up, I would say, well, I was brought up. I was born in Lambeth. I call myself a Windrush baby. Both of my parents are descendants from Jamaica. My father from Kingston, my mother from Clarendon, Maypen. And my experience of growing up is my mother and father had me when they were both quite young. My mum was 18, going on 19 at the time, so she was very young. Those times were very challenging for the black community, for a lot of the West Indians, being immigrants in London, and then getting into what Ashley spoke about, that chain of having to work, number of jobs to survive. And it was very difficult for my parents. I spent a lot of time actually growing up with my grandparents. It was my grandparents that up until I was about 16, I spent every Christmas with my grandparents. It was never with my mother and father. So my grandparents were, especially, I had a very good, strong relationship with my grandmother, Carmen Wallace. And what happened is, and where that relationship grew even closer, a lot of people won't know, but I actually left home when I was 17, just after I left school, 16, 17. And I had to grow up. I went and lived with my auntie. And prior to that, I fast forward the story, but prior to that, when I was 6 years old, my father immigrated to Canada. So it was this is where the relationship, where I was very close with my grandmother on my father's side, who kind of took me in as her own child. And even though today my relationship with my father is very good, with my dad going to Canada, I didn't have that father figure in my life. So I was growing up in Lambeth. My parents moved to Norwood and then moved to an area called Penge, Beckenham. I went to a school called Kelsey Park School for Boys. And I was very much into my sports, my passion for football. It was a very sporting school. And through my primary and secondary school years, I was that child where I didn't have my father taking me to football. I did not have my father to support me parents' evenings. My mum had to be mum and dad, and even my mum, because she was working a number of jobs, she couldn't be all there all the time. I mean, all the years that I played football and all the years that I'd done running athletics, I could be honest with you, I could count on my hand at once or twice that all my years that my actual dad's actually saw me play football. Even though he was very supportive, but he wasn't in the country. And as for my mum, I don't recall my mum ever watching me play football. She came and saw me when I used to do running, if I was in a final. But the day-to-day kind of thing, which is really, really key, especially for young people these days, it's really, really important. And that's why I honestly feel a lot of young people lose out, that do not have that father figure, is they miss that kind of bonding time. Something that I very much do with my own children, or certainly my son who used to play a lot of football. He's now at university, but it was almost, when I'm with my son and him playing, I was always living my childhood, and I was going back and doing the things that my father wasn't there to do. Cleaning my son's boots, waking him up, getting his kit ready, driving him to the football game, living through the game, being that parent, that parent on the touchline, going home with the joys and the pains of losing. All those things that I personally believe creates that bond with your son, and that father-son time, and that's what I very much try and do today. I have 3 children, and I try and what I say is I try and be that modern day parent with those old school values of just trying to be there for them as much as possible, talking to them as friends, supporting them and showing interest. It's very difficult. I know in the 20th century is very different to how it was back in the 70s when I was growing up, when Ashley was growing up. Obviously, between the two of us, I'm the younger one, of course, as you can see. But it's really important that you give back to your children, you get back, and that can create that kind of relationship. And one thing I would say is, you'll never get back those years you missed. Never. You'll never get that. Those first steps, your first goal, or your first, you'll never get that back. You never. So that's why it's so important, key, that as best as possible, fathers, and let's not forget, there's mothers that are fathers as well, have to be fathers. So even though we're talking about male role models, we've got to remember there's a lot of mothers out there doing fantastic jobs as male role models. So but they need that guidance and support.
Yeah, definitely. I think, for me, even to this day, I try and contact my dad to try and kind of rebuild bridges, if you like. But unfortunately, you know, for whatever reason, he's got his own plans, and you know, fair play to him. That's up to him. I don't hold that in my heart. That's not heavy in my heart. You know, I'm 30 years old now. I've got my own little one, so I need.
You're 30.
30 years old. 30 years young. So yeah, I've got my little one. So you know, we need to move forward, and what I try and make sure that I am is there all the time. You know, through all the good days, the bad days. You know, when she needs, when she needs me, I'm always there. So, you know, and that's something obviously I never had growing up. So that's really important for me to be able to do that for her. And the same thing, you know, with the local community, with the young people that I've worked with previously, you know, everyone's got their own issues. You know, not everyone has lived the same life I have, but everyone's got their own issues. And, you know, I might be able to relate to a lot of those issues. So, you know, being there for those young people as well, as, you know, they might call it a big brother, if you like, or a father figure. But the importance is actually being there, listening, understanding, kind of sharing your experiences and just making them understand that they're not alone in whatever situation that they're going through. There's always someone there. You just need to, you know, tap on the right doors. And someone's there to listen and you know, lend you their ears.
And that's where I feel our partnership, our friendship has been so successful in what we're doing today. Is we have that understanding, you know, and this is where it's important how you can relate to young people. You know, I can relate to, and actually can relate to those young people that might have that, not that have that father around them or a mother. You know, it's lived experiences. You cannot beat lived experiences, and that's where. Look, young people are not silly. They're very, very switched on and clued up, and they can see if you're real in your actions and you're genuine. Are you doing it because it looks good in your job, or are you doing it that you actually care and you're passionate? And you know, sometimes it's not about money. It's not about, you know, it's just about showing an interest. If you show an interest in a child who, you know, you're tapping into something that interests them, and you know, all they want is some love. And sometimes you have to give a bit of tough love, like with your own child. But that's part of growing up, and that's part of learning. That's part of becoming the man you are, becoming the woman you are. And my mother, who, in essence, through a lot of my key years, who grew up, she gave me a lot of tough love. And to this day, you know, she was very stern. You know, came from a very strict West Indian upbringing. My grandmother, I got spoiled a bit quite by my grandmother, because
it's always the way.
She, you know, whenever I was there, you know, leave the boy alone. He's like that kind of thing. But you need a bit of that in life. You needed that tough love, but then you need that warmth, that love. And to this day, I'll never forget you know, as much as what my mother and father had given, but the love that my grandmother showed me, I'll never forget that, because you will never forget where you felt loved. So that's where it's important that young people feel loved and appreciated.
In terms of, you know, bridging the gap between young people and the police, I'm going to be open and really honest with you. I'd say about 15 years ago, I got into a lot of trouble with the police. You know, from 15, no, I'd say about 16 up until maybe about 21. Till I was 21, I was getting myself in trouble with the police. So I had that negative mindset towards them. And I'm going to be really open and honest with you. And I say to this day, I still don't have much faith and trust in the police. You know, I know Mike's a police officer and he's sitting right next to me, but the police as an organization, you know, there's a lack of trust, and there's a lack of a lack of trust on my part for the police. But where I've got to know Mike, you know, I've got to know the man outside of the uniform. And I think that's the key in really rebuilding any kind of relationship between young people and the police. You know, if I hadn't have got to know Mike, then I would still have such a negative view. But I've, you know, along the journey that we've been on, I've met so many great officers who've, you know, they're showing you what they're really about, you know. And for me, if a police officer can come to you and you know, just really have that conversation, that positive conversation, and show a genuine interest in you, in your life, in your experiences, then I think that is where you're going to really be able to break down the barriers between, you know, not just the young people, but communities and the police. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, we're all one community. You know, we all come from the same places. All right, different lifestyles, maybe different upbringings, but we are actually one community. So, you know, I think it's really important that we are able to try and find different ways of, you know, building bridges again. And I think, you know, just having the open conversations, whether the police go down to their local projects, and, you know, just sit down with a few young people and talk to them and just ask them how their day's been and, you know, what they want to do in life. I think there you're going to have a much better opportunity to actually regain some kind of trust. I mean, it's not going to happen overnight, and they say Rome wasn't built overnight, but, you know, it's a stepping stone. And I think, you know, if we can go down that path, then I think, you know, we might be onto something. What's your view?
To be honest with you, and that's where I have to admire and respect Ashley for his honesty and open transparency. Look, the reality of it is, there's a long way to go. There has been some changes, but, you know, we can see in the current climate with Black Lives Matter, COVID-19, stop and search, it's very quite public without even me or actually saying there is a lack of trust in the police. And that's why what myself and Ashley do as a partnership through our lived experiences, that we come together as a community to try and make those differences. Because, look, me being a black officer in the police, it's very difficult. It's difficult in a lot of counts. Got some really, really supportive colleagues. But I think where things can be difficult is where some of your own colleagues do not understand you as a person, do not understand the background you come from. And you've got to remember, you know, everybody's different and everybody's got their own lived experiences. And I think what's quite difficult is with police officers, the mental health, and how being an officer, how that affects your own mental health at work, and that, you know, you can't just switch off at home. And so if your mental health is not great, then your job, your role is going to be difficult. Then how can you then kind of work with these hard to reach communities, because your mentality is very much is very difficult. So we're fighting a lot of things at the moment, and as I said, it's with the young people. There's a lot of work that needs to be done with not only young people, but the communities. We've gone a full circle, you know, and COVID-19 has really exposed a lot of things where people have been in lockdown. They've had a lot of thinking on their time. They've had a lot of anguish, and then we're slowly coming out of this lockdown, and then we're being exposed to all these things that are going on, stop and search. But without going into, this is not about stop and search, but there's been some great challenges for the police, and it's been very difficult for the community as well. So with all the things that are going on at the moment, racism in the communities, we can't hide away from the fact that racism is here, and it's still here, and it's not going away. We've just recently seen something that's happened on the tube, where somebody is being quite blatantly racist to a young person. So if somebody's being racist, and then a young person might have a difficult situation with a police, not to say that the police officer is racist, but they're just mindsets of thinking it's you and me, you're against me. And then they're thinking that everything's kicking in. You remember, a young person's mind goes 100 miles per hour. They don't, I'm not saying all of them, but they sometimes can't grasp that, okay, let's take that thinking time, let me think about it. They haven't got the experience to do that. So then in turn, they get themselves in a situation where before you know it, something's happening so quickly. The next minute, a situation's happened. You think, how did that get there? So like I said, there's some challenges. Me as a black officer, some challenges with my own community, seeing me, what I'm trying to do, seeing me as a person. And that's where Ashley was saying, there's got to be those honest conversations and dialogue to understand how each other's thinking. I'm not just a police officer, I'm a person. And beneath that uniform, I'm a human being that thinks and acts like you. But the issues are young people and other community members. It's not the person they see first, it's the uniform. Where you've got to remember these young people community, sometimes when they see police uniform, it could be trauma, it could be a police officer giving bad news, where there's been some unfortunate passing away in the family. It could be an unfortunate situation on the street. We're not talking like primary school where a police officer comes into the primary school and it's all very nice. It's in that, I'm the police officer, how are you? You're showing your equipment. That's great because that builds relationship. But we're talking about the reality of how a lot of young people see police officers on the streets. And a lot of time when they see police, it's the negative than the positive. So that's why it's so important, like what Ash and I are doing, the young people and the community members see the positive side of us, the police and the community coming together, changing that narrative from a negative mindset to a positive.
In terms of role models, I think, I touched on it with, what I was talking about with my daughter, and about being there. The saying, what's that old saying? It takes a village to raise a child. And I think that's key. Back in the day, I say back in the day, I'm 30, but growing up for me, I had my auntie, I had my nan, I had uncles around me. I never really had my parents, but that it made me think I still have a lot of great people around me, very supportive people around me. Those guys are really my role models. They are who I look up to, and who I aspire to be like. So so with them, it's helped me kind of see clearly, about life and what life is, and how you need to kind of go about life in a positive way. Again, being there for young people, like how my aunties and uncles and nan was there for me, I think that's very important, that we're there for them. It doesn't matter if it's my daughter, my nephew, cousins. It's just young people in general, people. being around for someone is very important, because you know everyone needs someone to be able to listen to them and, you know, look up to them, or, you know, just kind of give that shoulder if they need it. And yeah, I think it's just being there for someone is very important. And I think, you know, with the work that we do, that it kind of shows, you know, with all the young people that we work with, it shows that we actually care. You know, there's a lot of great organizations out there doing a lot of great work, but, you know, it's really kind of getting down to the nitty gritty and working with the young people themselves, and, you know, giving them that shoulder, if you like. So yeah, I mean, that's my view on role models, and how important it is for us to be role models.
And just to kind of re-emphasize about being role models, without going into all the nitty gritty, I and this is my personal opinion, and talking from myself, not for anybody else, but I personally feel that if not all of them, but some of those young people, or those in the prison system, I think if they had some positive role models in their life, guiding them, steering them, putting them arm around them, I personally feel that we wouldn't have so many men in prison today. And that's my personal opinion. I'm not speaking as a police officer. I'm speaking as a person looking around and seeing what happens in the community. You know, and you know, we can't go away from the fact, and this is about being open and transparent. There's so many young black men in prison. Why is that so? You know, for me, something's not right. Something. There again, as I said, look, not condoning if any of those have done wrong. Which, you know, there's a system in place. They're in prison for a reason. But this is where I think we need to strip back, and this is where there's issues. We're not getting to the root cause of why they're in prison. You know, what's triggered them to do whatever's happened. You know, is it they've missed that role model? Is it, you know, they've just been greedy and they're doing, you know? So that is where I think we all have a responsibility to really look and real strip back the core. You know, not everybody just goes and sells drugs. Not everybody just goes and commits a crime for the sake, or murders somebody. There's an issue. There's reasons, whether it be mental health. There's something because, you know, I'm just trying to think that there's something that's triggered a reaction or triggers somebody to do something. So I think we all have a responsibility to look at the root causes. Hence where what we're doing in KickOffAt3, we're working the early intervention. You know, look, we get a lot of young people that they come back to us time and time again. And when you start working close with young people, you do become that father figure to them. I'm not saying they were there to replace their father, their mother, but they get to know you, you get to know them. And I'll give you a prime example, and this is something that will never leave me, and I think it's a testimony to what Ashley and I do. But there's a young lady that we've got to know over the years who comes to our events every so often. I met her when she was at school, when I used to work in the school that she went to. I had as the local police officer, I had a very good relationship with her, but also I had a very good relationship with her parents. That open dialogue, they would ring me. Hello, PC Wallace, how are you? They genuinely cared. We got into discussion, you know, and they were very supportive of what we were doing, Ash and I, with what we're doing in football, but also supportive of what we were doing in schools, because Ashley used to work in the same school that I used to policing. But we had Father's Day recently, and what sticks to in my heart is that young lady actually sent me a text message, because she's now about 19, 20 now approximately, and she sent me a message, and the message read, "Hello, sir." She still to this day calls me sir, which respect is a lot of young people don't have that respect. She says, "Hello, sir. I know you're not my father, but thank you for being there for me." Now, for me, that nearly brought tears to my eyes, and I'm really honestly did. For her to text me, a police officer, and open up and say those words, that, and if that doesn't give testament to what we're doing of building relationships, and this is why it's really important that when you're building relationships with young people, I'm not saying you're going to be in contact with them every week, or so, because everybody, but maintaining them, the trust. We keep saying trust and confidence. You hear that all the time. Trust and confidence, trust and confidence. If you're not building those trust and confidence of young people, then that's when you're going to have difficulties. Now, that case was just an exception, but it's a wonderful exception because there's lots of police officers out there and lots of community. Let's not forget this is a partnership. A lot of community members like Ashley doing fantastic work where they're building warm friendships and sustain to when those young people become young adults. And, and I'm still going on the streets, and I'm young people. There was actually a young person that wanted to be a police officer in the school that I was working in. And what happened to me, I was working in Westminster about 4 weeks ago. I bumped into somebody and they were in police uniform because they were looking at me. He said, "You're PC Wallace, aren't you?" I said, "Yes, I am." And they were in police uniform. They said, "You're the person that used to come to my school and work in my school. You inspired me to be a police officer." And there they are in uniform in a police office. I know about 3, 4 young people that used to be in school when I was in school as a police officer. They are now police officers. So we must be doing something right.